The year is 1314. Paris is burning. On a small island in the Seine, the last Grand Master of the Knights Templar, Jacques de Molay, is being led to the stake. As the flames rise around him, he doesn't confess. He curses. He summons the Pope and the King of France to join him before God. Tribunal, before the year is out. Wheat and weeks. The prophecy is fulfilled. Both King Philip IV and Pope Clement V are dead. For millions, this wasn't just the end of a man. It was the final, tragic act of the most powerful and perhaps most misunderstood organization the medieval world had ever known. The poor fellow soldiers of Christ and of the Temple of Solomon. For centuries, the myths have overshadowed the men. Were they guardians of the Holy Grail? Secret keepers of the Ark of the Covenant? Or maybe a secretive cabal practicing occult rituals? Novelists and filmmakers have painted them as eternal villains or heroic martyrs, fueling endless speculation. After the First Crusade, Christian pilgrims traveling to the newly captured holy sites were constantly ambushed and killed. In the year 1119, a French nobleman named Huche de Bay, along with 8 other knights, approached King Baldwin II of Jerusalem. Their proposal was revolutionary. They wouldn't just defend the Holy Land. They would take perpetual vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. They would be monks first and soldiers second. King Baldwin accepted, giving them quarters in the most sacred ground available. The Temple Mount, on the site of the former Temple of Solomon. This is where they got their name. The Knights of the Temple, or the Templars. For their first decade, they remained poor, so poor that the famous seal of the order shows 2 knights riding on a single horse, a stark symbol of their initial poverty. This humility, ironically, would become the very bedrock of their immense power and wealth to come. The true turning point came in 1129 at the Council of Troyes, with the backing of the era's most influential religious figure, Saint Bernard of Clairvaux. The Templars were officially sanctioned by the Church. Bernard penned the influential treatise in praise of the new knighthood, giving their unique military-monastic blend unprecedented theological legitimacy. He argued that killing for Christ was not a sin, but a path to glory. Crucially, the Pope granted them incredible exemptions. The Templars answered only to the Holy See itself. They could cross any border without question. They could keep all the spoils of war, and they were exempt from all local taxes and tithes. This decree essentially made them a self-governing, transnational superpower, an army loyal only to the Pope. This unique blend of spiritual authority and military independence laid the groundwork for their financial dominion. They began as protectors of pilgrims, but they swiftly became the central bankers of the entire Western world. A rise that was destined to invite immense envy, and ultimately, a lethal fall. Join us next time as we explored how these warrior monks built an economic empire that rivaled kingdoms, and how that very success sowed the seeds of their own destruction. Welcome back. In our last segment, we saw the birth of the Knights Templar, a small band of warrior monks sworn to protect pilgrims. But how did this humble order transform into one of the most powerful and wealthy organizations the world has ever known? The answer lies not just on the battlefield, but in their revolutionary financial genius. This is the story of how the Templars built an empire of gold. The Crusader states were a dangerous frontier. For a European noble or wealthy merchant, traveling to the Holy Land was a perilous undertaking. It wasn't just the journey itself. It was the burden of carrying vast sums of money for expenses. Robbers and pirates lurked at every turn. Carrying a fortune in gold and silver was like painting a target on your back. The Templars, with their reputation for discipline and integrity, saw a problem and devised a brilliant solution. They invented something truly groundbreaking, a system we would recognize today as a primitive form of banking. Imagine this. A pilgrim in London, preparing for his journey, could visit the local Templar. There, he would deposit his wealth. Say, 100 gold coins. In return, he wouldn't receive a heavy bag of cash, but a simple piece of parchment. This was a letter of credit, encoded with a secret cipher known only to the Templar Order. The pilgrim could then travel across Europe and the Mediterranean. Light and unburdened, if he needed funds along the way, He could stop at any Templar outpost, present his letter, and withdraw the amount he needed. When he finally arrived in Jerusalem, he could visit the Templar headquarters at the Al-Aqsa Mosque and withdraw the remainder of his fortune. The Templars would take a small fee for this service. But for the pilgrim, it was a small price to pay for security and peace of mind. It was revolutionary. They had effectively created the first international banking network. This system was built upon a vast and efficient infrastructure. Across Europe, the Templars established a network of command. These weren't just forts. They were sprawling agricultural estates, farms, vineyards, mills, and churches. Donations poured in from grateful nobles and common folk alike, granting the Templars huge tracts of land. They managed these lands with incredible efficiency, producing wine, wool, grain, and other goods. Each commandery became a local economic hub, generating immense revenue that flowed back to the order. By the mid-12th century, they had hundreds of these properties, from the fields of England to the coasts of Italy, creating a self-sustaining economic powerhouse. With this incredible wealth, the Templars became the primary bankers to the kings and popes of Europe. When King Louis VII of France needed to finance his part in the Second Crusade, who did he turn to? The Templars. They loaned him a staggering sum. When King John of England was in financial trouble, the Templar headquarters in London, the New Temple, effectively served as his royal treasury. They managed state debts, collected taxes, and provided massive loans to fund wars and build cathedrals. They were trusted implicitly, their vaults more secure than any royal palace. Their financial influence became so great that they could make or break kingdoms. But we must not forget their original purpose. The Templars were, first and foremost, warrior monks. While their financial empire grew in Europe, their knights were on the front lines in the Holy Land, earning a reputation for fanatical bravery. They were the shock troops of the Crusader armies. At the Battle of Montgisard in 1177, a few hundred Templar knights, alongside a small Crusader force, charged a vastly superior army led by the great Saladin himself, routing them and securing a legendary victory against impossible odds. During the Siege of Acre, a critical port city, the Templars were the backbone of the defense, holding the walls against relentless attacks. Their Grand Masters often led from the front, and many died in battle, sword in hand. They were both pious monks and elite soldiers, a combination that terrified their enemies and inspired their allies. Their military prowess was inseparable from their identity. The red cross on their white mantles became a symbol of both unwavering faith and terrifying martial skill. They were the spearhead of the Crusades, and their sacrifices on the battlefields of the East were paid for by the profits from their farms in the West. This duo, identity banker and warrior, tycoon and monk made the Templars uniquely powerful. The wealth generated in Europe funded the wars in the Holy Land. The military victories in the East enhanced their reputation, which in turn brought more donations and financial business in the West. It was a perfectly symbiotic relationship. They built castles, financed armies, and held the fate of nations in their hands. They had transcended their humble origins to become a state within a state, an international corporation with its own army, accountable only to the Pope. By the dawn of the 13th century, the Knights Templar were at the zenith of their power. Their treasury was overflowing, their influence was unmatched, and their military reputation was legendary. But as they stood atop this mountain of gold and glory, shadows were beginning to gather. Their immense wealth and power bred jealousy and suspicion. Kings who owed them fortunes began to see them not as allies, but as creditors and rivals. The very success that had built their empire would soon plant the seeds of its destruction. Join us next time as we explore the dramatic and brutal downfall of the Knights Templar, a story of intrigue, betrayal, and a king determined to wipe them from the face of the earth. The association was forged centuries later, primarily during the 19th century Romantic Revival. Authors and esoteric thinkers, fascinated by the Templars' mysterious demise, retroactively inserted them into the Grail narrative. They saw the Templars' secrecy and their base on the Temple Mount as the perfect backstory for guardians of Christianity as greatest relic. However, there is zero historical evidence from the Templars' own time, no documents, no chronicles, no letters that links them to the Holy Grail. It's a compelling story, but it's Arthurian legend, not Templar history. Next up, the Ark of the Covenant. This myth suggests that during their initial years, excavating beneath the Temple Mount, the Templars found the long-lost Ark, the chest said to contain the stone tablets of the Ten Commandments. This, the story goes, was the true source of their power and wealth. The logic seems simple. They were called the Knights of the Temple of Solomon, so they must have been looking for Solomon's treasures. But this interpretation misunderstands their name. The Temple of Solomon was a symbolic and geographical reference. The Al-Aqsa Mosque, which served as their headquarters, was built on the site of the historical temple. In the medieval Christian mind, this location was inextricably linked to King Solomon. Calling themselves the poor fellow soldiers of Christ and of the Temple of Solomon was a way of grounding their identity in this sacred location, not a declaration of a treasure hunt. Like the Grail, the Ark of the Covenant myth is an exciting tale, but one without historical foundation. The Templars' wealth came from donations and a brilliant banking system, not from ancient treasure. These accusations were, in fact, the very ones used to destroy them. But were they true? The historical consensus is a firm no. These claims were largely fabricated during their trial. The image of the Templars as occultists was heavily promoted by later groups, particularly in the 18th and 19th centuries. Organizations like the Freemasons, for example, admired the Templars' structure and mystique. Some Masonic rites adopted Templar names and symbols, creating a lineage that was symbolic, not historical. And so, we arrive at the final, tragic act of the Knights Templar. After years of brutal torture, show trials, and coerced confessions, the once mighty order was officially dissolved by Pope Clement V in 1312. But this dissolution left behind one of history's most tantalizing questions, a question that has fueled countless books, movies, and treasure hunts. What happened to the Templar treasure? The legend is intoxicating, isn't it? A vast fortune of gold, silver, holy relics, perhaps, even the Holy Grail itself secretly spirited away from the Paris temple just before King Philipp's dawn raid. The tale says ships laden with treasure slipped out of the port of La Rochelle, vanishing into the mists of history. Their cargo destined for a secret hiding place in Scotland, North America, or some forgotten corner of the world. It's a fantastic story. But the historical reality is, as it often is, a little more administrative. The truth is, there was no single, colossal treasure in the way we imagine a pirate's chest. The Templars' wealth was their network. It was land, castles, farms, vineyards, and an intricate international banking system. When the order was dissolved, the Pope decreed that all Templar assets should be transferred to their rival order, the Knights Hospital. Of course, King Philip the Fair, whose debts likely motivated the whole affair, made sure to skim a massive amount off the top to cover the costs of the trials. Other monarchs across Europe did the same. So, most of the Templars' tangible wealth wasn't hidden. It was legally, if unjustly, redistributed. The real treasure, their innovative system of banking and international finance, was absorbed into the European economy. The idea of a lost hoard of gold is far more romantic than the reality of medieval property law. But the end of the order didn't mean the end of its leaders. Two figures remained: Jacques de Molay, the last Grand Master, and Geoffrey de Charny, a high-ranking preceptor. For 7 long years, they had languished in prison. In March 1314, they were brought before a crowd in front of Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris to hear their final sentence, life in prison. But at that moment, something snapped. De Mol, an old man broken by years of torment, found his voice. He stood up and recanted his confession, proclaiming his innocence and the innocence of the Templar order. Geoffrey de Charny did the same. King Philip, enraged by this public defiance, ordered them to be executed that very evening on a small island in the Seine, with the spires of Notre Dame in the background. Jacques de Molay and Geoffrey de Charny were burned at the stake. It's here that legend and history intertwine in a chilling finale. As the flames consumed him, de Molay is said to have issued a curse, summoning both Pope Clement V and King Philip IV to appear before God's judgment within a year. Whether you believe in curses or coincidences, what happened next is undeniable. Pope Clement V died just 1 month later from a sudden illness, and King Philip the Fair, the powerful monarch who had brought down the Templars, died before the year was out, following a stroke during a hunting trip. The curse of the Templars had come to pass, cementing their legend in the popular imagination forever. With the order gone and its leaders dead, you might think the story ends there. But the Templar legacy was just beginning its second life. Their specter has haunted history for 700 years. In the 18th century, the burgeoning fraternal organization of the Freemasons began incorporating Templar symbols, rituals, and titles into their own degrees. While there's no direct, provable lineage connecting the historical Templars to modern Freemasonry, the Masons adopted the Templar story as a foundational myth, a tale of esoteric knowledge, unjust persecution, and secret survival. This association is what truly propelled the Templars from a historical footnote into a cornerstone of conspiracy theories and esoteric lore. From there, they exploded into popular culture. Think about it. Don Brown's The Da Vinci Code made them central players in a global conspiracy to hide the bloodline of Christ. The Assassin's Creed video game series casts them as the eternal villains, a secret society vying for world control. They appear in films like Indiana Jones and The Last Crusade as guardians of the Holy Grail. The white mantle with the red cross is instantly recognizable, a shorthand for ancient secrets, holy warriors, and lost treasure. So why, after all these centuries, are we still so captivated by the Knights Templar? I think it's because their story has everything. It's a tale of piety and power, of faith and finance. It's a story of incredible innovation, followed by a swift and brutal downfall. It's a mystery with a missing treasure, a dramatic courtroom betrayal, and a dying curse that seemingly comes true. The Templars represent the allure of the secret society, the idea that there is a hidden history, a deeper truth lurking just beneath the surface of what we're told. They were warrior monks, bankers to kings, and ultimately, victims of a greedy monarch. Their story forces us to question power, authority, and the lines between faith, politics, and money. The historical Templars may be long gone, but their legend a potent mix of fact, fiction, and enduring mystery is more powerful than ever. It's a testament to the fact that while empires may fall and treasure can be lost, a good story is immortal. The date is Friday, October 13th, 1307. A date that will echo through history, forever associated with bad luck and a terrible betrayal. At dawn, across the entire Kingdom of France, a meticulously planned operation springs into action. Royal agents, acting on secret orders from King Philip the Fair, storm every Templar, preceptory, commandery, and castle. They move with brutal efficiency, surprising the knights in their beds during their morning prayers, completely unaware of the storm about to break over their heads. In Paris, the Grand Master himself, Jacques de Molay, is arrested. Just the day before, he had been an honored guest at the royal court, a pallbearer at the funeral of Philip's sister. Now, he's a prisoner, dragged away in chains. From the most powerful knight in Christendom to a common criminal in the blink of an eye. This wasn't just an arrest. It was a coordinated, kingdom-wide decapitation of one of the most powerful organizations in the world. Imagine the shock, the confusion. These were the celebrated heroes of the Crusades, the elite warriors of God, now being treated like the worst of criminals. But how could this happen? How could a king dare to move against a holy military order, answerable only to the Pope? The answer lies in the charges. Philip didn't accuse them of financial crimes or treason against the crown. No, he aimed for something far more devastating, something that would strip them of all legitimacy and public sympathy. He accused them of heresy. The list of accusations was as shocking as it was long, and frankly, completely fabricated. It read like a work of fiction. The king's agents claimed that during their secret initiation ceremonies, new recruits were forced to deny Jesus Christ, to spit on the crucifix, and to engage in obscene killing. These were men who had dedicated their lives to defending Christianity, who had bled and died on the battlefields of the Holy Land. The charges were designed to be as offensive and blasphemous as possible. But it got worse. The most infamous charge, the one that has captivated imaginations for centuries, was the accusation of idol worship. Philip claimed the Templars secretly venerated a mysterious head known as Baphomet. What was Baphomet? No one really knew. The inquisitors themselves couldn't seem to agree. Was it a severed head? A pagan idol? A demon with a goat's head? The descriptions were vague, contradictory, and almost certainly invented to stoke public fear and outrage. The image of a demonic, goat-headed figure we often associate with Baphomet today actually came centuries later. At the time, it was just a name. A boogeyman used to paint the Templars as devil worshippers. Other charges included accusations of promoting homosexuality and a host of financial corruptions, all designed to create a picture of a secret society rotten to its core. These weren't random accusations. They were a masterful piece of propaganda, a smear campaign of epic proportions. Philip knew he couldn't just seize their wealth. He had to destroy their reputation first. He had to turn the heroes into villains. With the Templars imprisoned, the second phase of Philip's plan began, extracting confessions, and for that, he turned to the darkest tool of the medieval era, torture. The captured knights were handed over to royal inquisitors, not the papal inquisition, which was a crucial detail. These men were experts in pain. They used the rack to stretch bodies to their breaking point. They used the strappado, hoisting victims by their wrists tied behind their back, dislocating their shoulders. They burned the soles of their feet with hot coals. Under such unbearable agony, men will say anything. Brave warriors who had faced down entire armies in battle were broken. They confessed. They admitted to spitting on the cross. They admitted to denying Christ. Some even confessed to worshipping the mysterious head of Baphomet, giving whatever description their torturers wanted to hear. Jacques de Molay, the Grand Master, also confessed under duress. He later said he only did so to escape the torment, believing the Pope would surely intervene and see the injustice. News of the arrests and the shocking confessions sent waves across Europe. The Pope, Clement V, was initially furious. The Templars were his order, directly under his protection. A king had no right to arrest them, let alone try him for heresy. That was the Church's domain. Clement wrote angry letters to Philip, demanding he hand over the prisoners and their property to the Church. He declared Philip's actions unlawful and launched his own papal inquiry. For a moment it seemed like the Pope would stand up to the king and save the Templars. But Clement was in a weak position. He was a Frenchman, elected with Philip's support, and his papal court was based in Avignon, France, not Rome. He was, in many ways, a captive of the French king. Philip had the confessions, coerced by torture, but confessions nonetheless. He controlled the narrative, plastering these confessions across the kingdom, turning public opinion firmly against the Templars. He put immense pressure on Clement, threatening to charge a previous pope, Boniface VIII, with heresy posthumously, an act that would have shattered the Church's authority. Slowly, agonizingly, Clement's resistance crumbled. He was caught between his duty to protect the Templars and the overwhelming political power of the French king. He saw the confessions, and whether he believed them or not, he saw the political reality. The scandal was too great. The order was too damaged. In 1312, at the Council of Vienne, Pope Clement V made his final, fateful decision. He didn't declare the Templars guilty of heresy. In fact, the Papal Commission had found little credible evidence outside of the confessions extracted under torture, but he stated that the order's reputation had been so irreparably tarnished, the scandal so great, that it could no longer function. By papal decree, not by a guilty verdict, the Knights Templar were formally dissolved, not for being guilty, but for the good of the Church, to end the scandal. It was a political solution to a problem created by greed and lies. The order that had stood for nearly 200 years was wiped from existence with a stroke of a pen. Their immense wealth, the real prize Philip had been after all along, was ordered to be transferred to their rivals, the Knights Huss. Of course, Philip the Fair made sure to take a massive administrative fee for his troubles, effectively seizing a huge portion of the Templar treasury he had coveted for so long. The great betrayal was complete. Thanks for watching. If you found this journey into the past compelling, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next chapter in history. See you next time.